Okay, so in today's session we're going to review some of the details of how to manage BI and data analytics project in agile environments. Right, so but first of all, I'd like to thank to all the organizers of the event for this amazing opportunity to participate and share my knowledge and deliver my sessions. A few words about myself. I'm a co-founder and faculty director at Flex Course Group. We deliver high-quality professional training courses and workshops on agile, innovation, and process improvement topics. So I have more than 8 years of experience in the technology sector and hold various certifications like PSM1, 2, Safe Agilist, and many more. Okay, so what we're going to do at this session is we will take a look at the basic steps and basic phases of the BI and data analytics project. So we also will review some DB regression testing concepts, also some typical issues that we can face while working on this type of projects, and also we're going to review some best practices. Okay, so let's start with the introduction, and here this is the typical architecture, right, that we have while working on building and developing some BI and data analytics solutions. All right, so basically what we've got here is the data sources, right? So these are basically the sources that data came from. So it could be some databases, CSV or Excel files, flat files, or it could be an integration when we use APIs to get the data in JSON or XML format, right? Then we have ETL processes to clean the data, to transform it, and to load it to the staging database, right? From there, we have some additional ETL processes to load data into data warehouse, and from the data warehouse, we are ready to build our reports or OLAP cubes or dashboards, or it could be some BI apps. Okay. Any question on this schema? Okay. Now we have some basic phases within the Agile BI project lifecycle, right? So, and these phases are concept, inception, construction, transition, production, and retirement, right? So at the concept stage, we define the vision for our project. At the inception stage, we will take a look at our requirements. We'll start work with the stakeholders. So we will require some active stakeholder participation at this stage, right? And after we define some initial requirements and user stories, we can start working on our iterations or sprints, right? Well, as soon as we've got some releasable increment, we can deploy it into production, right? And after that, we've got some maintenance, operations, or support teams that will attend the user requests, right? And after that, well, after some time of work, the application is retired, right? And replaced by some new version or maybe a different application. Okay. Any question on this lifecycle? Okay. Now, what's very important while working on Agile BI and data analytics project is that we need to understand what are the most prioritized requirements, right? So if we take a look at this picture, we would see that more frequent and more difficult requirements are our highest priority, okay? So, you know, it has almost no sense to start building some easy requirements, you know, some easy queries, because basically it has no sense, because usually the users of the BI and data analytics solutions would like to have some complicated and tough questions answered. That's why we need to maximize our value. If we work in an agile environment, of course we tend to maximize our value, so that's why we need to release some really complicated and frequent requirements on the initial stages, right? So the users would start work on this with this functionality. Okay. Any question on this slide? All right. Now let's review some DB regression testing concepts. Well, what we've got usually at this, working with the databases, we've got black box testing, we have clear box testing, and we have some data, right? So we've got some batch data during the data load and data extract operations. All right, so some typical black box testing would include data values being persisted or retrieved, and also we are going to test stored procedures and functions and so on, right? And while clear box testing is more about testing triggers, views, constraints, some existing data quality, we need to ensure that it's absolutely important to have quality data within the database, because if we've got some errors in our data, or we've got some issues related to this data related stuff, well, it will be complicated, because the end user would have some hard time working with these solutions, because it will be impossible for them to make a well-informed decision. All right. And also, while testing the database, we need to have some test data, right? And for that, we usually use some test data generators. Okay. Any question on this picture? All right. Now, we need to define a test automation strategy, right? So basically, these are some standard steps. So we need to define goals, then we plan our test approach, how we face what we're going to test, and so on. Then we should select the framework we would like to work with, right? Then we are going to think about how to select some testing tools, and then we will design and execute our tests. So and the last step here would be to write some maintenance scripts. Okay, so also in this presentation I included some list of the testing tools, so you could review it later. Okay. Any question about test automation strategy, or maybe someone would like to share his or her experience working on these type of strategies? Okay. Now let's review some DB test types. So basically, while testing the database, we have some constraint testing, right? So we need to ensure that the value is not null, that unique constraint is in place, etc. Right? After that, we need to make sure that we don't have duplicates in the database, which is called usually the database normalization. Okay. After that, we need to review the navigation testing, initialization testing, right, and attribute check testing, which is just comparison between source and target attributes. Okay, so what we got in the data warehouse and what the end users will see in the interface. Okay. Any questions about the DB test types? Or maybe someone would like to share some experience working with these tests? Mm-hmm. Okay, so you have some testing strategy in place, but you don't have any DevOps pipeline established and built, right? And you need to build a DevOps pipeline on the base that you currently have. Is that right? Okay, so let's take a look at this, right? And this slide, so we've got the maintaining scripts. Most likely that you have some design and execution plan in place, right? And you have some maintaining scripts. And from there, you need to understand how you're gonna be building your DevOps pipeline, right? What tools you'd like to use, and maybe most likely, you need to plan the transition from the strategy you currently have to the DevOps pipeline strategy, right? So what you need to do, it should be tailored approach, I'd say, because it's hard to say exactly, right, without knowing all the details of your environment, right? So what tools are you using, etc., right? But what you need to do, you maybe need to plan to see if there's some integration, between your current platform and the platform you'd like to use for DevOps to build a pipeline and so on. So I'd say you need to start from there. Review your current state and see if there's some transition steps from your current state to the DevOps state. Maybe you need just to replace gradually the tools you're using. So that would be the approach, I'd say, without knowing all the details, as I mentioned. No problem. Any other questions? Okay, now let's see some ETL test types. So most popular ETL test types is the product validation testing, right? So this is the validation we do before moving to prod. After that, we have some source to target testing. All right, so we need to make sure that our scripts work fine, and the transformation and the output of this transformation is expected. Okay, now after that we have some application upgrade testing. We do it usually, in some sandbox environment when we need to upgrade from an old application to a new one, a new version, right? Especially if we have some really old app and we need to update it to some really newer version. Yeah. And also we need to test our data transformation and data completeness. Okay. Any question on this test types? Okay. Now, what's the flow? So to run our test, we need to put a DB in a known state, right? So how we do this? There are basically two ways of putting a DB in a known state. So first of all, we have a fresh start, which require the complete rebuilding of the database, right? And sometimes it's a good approach, especially when you just start with your development and you need to test some crucial functions or some complicated stuff, and it would be better for you to just to rebuild the database, to create a new one, etc. Right? But sometimes, most likely during some later stage of the project, the data reinitialization would be better approach, right? So you just clean the data within the table, so basically doing some truncate, and after that you just you populate the tables with some new data. Right? This is the testing data, right? And after that we just run the tests and check the results. Okay? Any question about this flow? what's the approach? So a good approach for BI and data analytics project would be use what is called test first development, right? So how does it work? First we add a test, right? Then we run the test. If it's pass, okay, that's fine. We're going to add a new one and run it, right? But if the test fails, we make some changes to this test, right? And we run it again. And if it fails, well, let's make another change to see if it works. And if it works, okay, that's fine. We set it to pass, and the development stops here. Or development continues, right? If we need to run some more tests. So this is the test first development approach that works really well on some DB related stuff, right? Any questions? Okay. Now, while working on the BI projects, it's very important to have DB Sandbox, right? So DB Sandbox is usually some separated servers that represent different environments. So we could have a development sandbox, we could have project integration sandbox, demo or pre-prod or UAT, whatever you call it, and then we have the production environment. All right. So, and some of the characteristics of these sandboxes is that we have some frequent development between, that is going on between development sandbox and project integration sandbox, because a lot of stuff is going on here. So we deploy frequently, and if something is broken, right, we just pass it back for further development and improvement, right? Here we have more controlled deployment, right, between the project integration sandbox and demo or UAT or pre-prod, etc. Right? So here we'd like to, to push to pre-prod or UAT. We'd like to push some stuff that works well. At least, we've done some testing in the development and project integration sandbox, and it works well. So it seems to be, at least, all right, that it works well. So we ran some unit tests and integration tests. So we have all passed. So we are ready to deploy to UAT, right? So, and here is where we can have some focus group, or we can have some folks dedicated to test it in UAT, or maybe we have, a QA team testing all this stuff. So, and if some defect is identified, we just report a bug to the development team to resolve. Okay, and after that, let's say we have some high control deployment. Right. So after the UAT testing is done, we pass to production environment, and here we have operations and support teams that handle all these applications and reports, etc. Right? And if something is going on, so it could be either software problem reports or bug reports as well. So it depends on the organization, right? Because in some organizations we have the same, bug reporting assigned to support staff to handle. Any questions on this slide? Or maybe someone would like to share the experience how they have this sandbox installed and implemented in their organization. Okay, perfect. Great. Now, let's review some typical issues we could find working on the BI projects. Well, most important problem and most frequent problem is this, that data management or governance is ill organized. Well, because sometimes you just you start working in an organization, and you have some BI project assigned, and the first question you'd like to ask is this, what about your data governance, how you manage your data? And they say, well, what's that? Okay, so no data management or governance in place. So that's not good, because it's really hard to control your data, to have your data clean without without a dedicated department. So this is one of the most frequent problems nowadays still, right? So and the second problem is related to the first one, right? So it's complicated to get some correct data definitions, because, as I said, if the organization doesn't have any data governance in place, it would be complicated to get. So you need to talk to some database administrators and so on, and most likely they'll say, oh, you know what? So it's complicated. Go ask another guy, and so on. So it could be a tough time getting some correct data definition. And also, some teams, especially some brand new teams that don't have many experienced developers in place, they lack of consistent development partners for BI artifacts, so it could be also a problem. So I'm not saying that there's no code review, but it could be the case, right? But to solve this problem, that would be nice to have at least one senior developer in the team that could support his or her junior colleagues. Okay. Any problem? Any questions about these typical issues? Maybe someone had some similar issues in their organizations. Yeah. Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah, right. Because in this case, unfortunately, we could say that a data lake becomes a data trash can, because you don't have. I guess you don't have any ETL scripts in place, right? Because it's hard. It's hard work to develop all these ETL scripts, and after that, who's going to do it, right? So data management or governance department, and if there are no such folks in place, well, it would be a tough time. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's move on. Now, next typical issues are the lack of TDD tools or experience to use it. Also, no continuous integration or continuous delivery pipelines established, and constant priority changes. Right. So very popular thing that we face on this type of projects, that the product owner or the stakeholders say, okay, well, today I have this priority, this is a high priority item, but tomorrow they get back and say, all right, but we need to change the priority, so now the priority is other stuff, so we need to just set away your current work and go start working on some different things to do. So so, and also, regarding the previous question about how to migrate from the current test execution strategy to DevOps. So this is, as I said, one of the frequent challenges and issues we can find working on this project. So, and as I said, I need to just elaborate some strategy on how you going to plan your transition. Okay, all right. Any questions about this one? Okay. Now let's review some best practices. All right. So the best practices that we could apply to initial phases of the project could be apply lean thinking, which means that we need to eliminate waste. We need to have all clean, and especially if we're talking about data. So this is really important. This is really good stuff to apply. Now we need to think and elaborate some data and technical architecture definitions early on, because otherwise it would be complicated to get into this stuff while we are having already some increment and we have some development in progress, and this stuff is at some advanced stage, so that would be complicated. So the best thing to do in this case is to schedule some time for the team, or maybe just allocate some team's capacity for these data and technical architecture definitions, right, to work during the initial sprints, right? So that would be nice to do. Okay, and we need to elaborate change management and risk management plans as well. So this would help us to be better prepared for any risk or priority change in our project. Okay. Any questions on this one? Okay. Now, what are the best practices for the requirements? Here we've got vertical slice architecture. This is very important because we need to deliver some value to our customers. And in some projects, not only BI and data analytics projects, but on some other projects that develop, for example, microservices or web applications and so on, some teams decide to start with horizontal slicing. So what does this mean? It means that you have some technical architecture focus first. So you work on the database definitions, on the normalization, on the ETL scripts, whatever it is, and no functionality is being developed and deployed to the production environment. So the customers, in fact, they don't have anything to work with, right? So what we can do, the best practice for any BI and data analytics project would be to use vertical slicing, which means that the team should work on the complete full stack functionality. So some stuff developed on the back end, then you got your front end connected, and after that you have something, right? So you have something to deliver to the customers by the end of the sprint. Because otherwise, it could happen that the stakeholders would ask, start asking questions like, okay, so the first 2, 3, 4 sprints passed, so but we don't have anything in prod. So what's going on? So what's happening? And the team will say, okay, we're working on some technical architecture stuff, but no value has been delivered. So this is not good approach, especially if we're talking about agile teams. Now, focus on user experience. The same thing, right? So it is connected to the vertical slice architecture. So we need to work in our front end and make sure that we've got our end users involved in the process to make sure we are developing some quality stuff. Because otherwise, it could be the case, so the team is focused on something, and you don't have, you don't see the big picture, the complete perspective that your users have. So that's why it would be really nice to involve, some user groups to test and to interact with the interface. And doing that, we are enabling some short feedback cycle, which will allow us to improve our application. Okay. Now, our plannings should be requirements based, right? So the same, we need to prioritize our requirements, and we need to work on the most important requirements first. And as I said, stakeholders' participation is essential during all the time of the project, right? Any questions about the requirements best practices? Okay. Now, iterations or sprints. What are the best practices here? So we need to identify the length of our sprints, right? Because we all know that some standard recommended in the Scrum guide is that 2 to 4 weeks length of the sprint. So we need to understand what is good for our particular project, because some projects really benefit from having a 1 week sprint or even 4 week sprints, right? But remember all the time that the longer your sprints are, the longer your feedback cycles is. So in this case, it would be complicated sometimes. You could have a situations that you have a lot of work that's been delivered during the first sprint, and your sprint is 3 to 4 weeks long, and then you have some complaints from the customers, and it would be complicated because you have more 3 or 4 weeks to go to work on this solution. So if you decided to implement the longer iterations, you need to make sure you have some really proactive customers involvement. This would allow you to deliver and maximize your value better. Okay. Now, as we talked about this, test execution plan and CI and CD pipelines are really important. So we need to to see how we do this, and do we allocate some capacity within the team, or maybe we will involve some external teams to help us with this test execution and continuous integration and continuous delivery pipelines. Okay. Any questions about the iterations best practices? Now, the maintenance phase, right? Last but not least phase of our project lifecycle. So we need to make sure we have some quality documentation in place, right? Because quality documentation would allow us to have all the, let's say not all, but we could decrease the amount of the user requests, because we could have, when you have better documentation, you could just pass this documentation to your users, and and the amount of the user requests to the support team will decrease. Right. Also, it would be good to work with support and operations department, the same stuff. So you need to make sure they have the access to the documentation about the project functionalities and so on. And also, maybe you'd like to collaborate to write some knowledge-based articles to resolve some most frequent issues, some massive incidents and so on, right? Also, it's important what type of DevOps cycle you have, because usually we would have a long DevOps cycle, which means that we have a separate an external team that works on the all the user requests, like support or operations team. Or we have a short DevOps cycle, which means that we have some capacity allocated within the team, so we have some team members that handle all the user requests. Okay, so this could be also a good approach to use. And lean data management in place, right? So we need to reduce waste, eliminate obsolete data, etc. So it's absolutely crucial to eliminate obsolete data, because our BI apps or reports, etc., are all about making better decisions. So it's not possible, evidently, with some obsolete data. Okay. Right. Any questions about this maintenance best practices? All right. Now, let's do some conclusions, right? So, in this case, I'd say that, as you may see that, it's something that we have in the BI and data analysis project. These projects have their peculiarities in place. So we need to have, we need to be prepared to work on this type of project, most likely because, it's important because, let's say, we need to involve some data management and data governance department. So, and these projects are, let's say, a bit different from some standard web applications or microservices projects we usually work on. Okay, so these best practices we've seen would help you, to work better with your agile teams. Okay, so any questions, any experience you'd like to share, I would be happy to help. Okay, if you don't have any questions, we have an appendix here. So here you will find some DB testing tools, right? Some ETL testing tools and some useful links regarding these as well, the testing tools and database and business intelligence related stuff. So, regarding the first question I got today, what would be the approach? So you could review these DB and ETL testing tools and see how these testing tools maybe could help you, in planning your transition steps between the standard testing and DevOps pipeline. Okay, guys, that's it. Well, I have no more things to share for today. So if you don't have any questions, then well, let's terminate here and have a nice day. Cheers, guys. Bye bye.